bullshit now.
The sun has set in the sky. Stephen and Andrew say goodbye. That's Teletubbies I was referencing there.
Stay tuned to our Teletubbies podcast.
It's 15 minutes long, but we do it twice.
It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood, a beautiful day for a neighbor. Would you be mine? Could you be mine? I've always wanted to have a neighbor just like you. I've always wanted to live in a neighborhood with you.
Ooh, that's nice. The light.
Wait, you think it's a beautiful day in our neighborhood?
I do. It's a beautiful sunset in our neighborhood.
Well, it's also a beautiful day in Mr. Rogers' neighborhood.
Or the reflection of the sunset off buildings. The sunset is the opposite of our window.
Yes, we are getting a beautiful east view of the sunset.
Yeah. But when you're listening to this, it's a different day, and we don't know what time of day it is or how beautiful it is. But we hope it's beautiful on the inside.
We are watching episode 1483. And when was the last episode that we said our names? I'm Steven.
I'm Andrew.
Just in case you forgot.
Just in case you've forgotten.
Mr. Rogers comes in with a giant, big old portfolio bag.
Yeah, he's going to show us his portfolio.
But his portfolio just has one picture.
And he didn't paint it.
Somebody named Andy Wyatt did.
And Andy Wyatt has been on a previous episode, as we see in a flashback.
A very brief flashback.
Very brief flashback. I think the first flashback we've had on Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. Within our podcast, certainly.
There was the flashback to the other operas.
Oh, that's true. That was more of a clip show. That was within the Lando Make-Believe.
Yes. This was just like a very brief, while I'm talking, we're going to show 6 seconds of a previous episode so that you remember what he looks like and what I'm talking about.
Andy Wyatt is an artist of some sort. Comes from a family of artists, apparently.
Mm-hmm. I would say that he is an animator.
Yeah, last
he
time...
brings in his Zoetrope.
Zoetrope. I was going to say kinetoscope, but that's something else.
And he also is doing some cutout animation with paper silhouettes.
Yeah, but he also paints. Because he's painted this watercolor painting of a shed in a field.
Yep.
The way Mr. Rogers phrases it after the flashback was like he was into art even when he was a little boy, and now he's become a painter.
Uh-huh.
Which... he wasn't a little boy in that flashback.
No.
He was, at minimum, in his, late teens to mid-20s.
Right.
And could have been as old as, mid-30s.
Right.
It's hard to tell, fashion being what it was.
Yeah, everybody looks like they're old because they're all dressed like the old people we know.
Exactly. I got kind of and this is a show neither of us really watch at all, but I got kind of a Tim and Eric vibe off of him. Yeah. And also from our next guest in his segment, because after sort of thinking about paintings for a while, there's a knock at the back door.
Very briefly. We spend almost no time on it.
Yeah.
There's a knock at the door, and who should it be but Chef and Baker Brockett?
Chef Brockett.
Oh, hey, Mr. Rogers.
Hi, how are you?
I'm having a bad day today.
Yeah, he comes in and he's I guess visibly a bit upset because Mr. Rogers asks him, "How are you?"
And he says, I'm fine.
I'm okay, but I'm not all okay," he says. Which is this is like when you need to have a talk with somebody or something, you're like, "Now don't worry, but." When you're in a minor, when you hit a tree or something and ding up the car.
And then you call somebody.
Yeah, it's listen, I'm okay, but. There's been so it's very, I'm
Mr.
okay,
Rogers,
but I'm not all okay.
Mr. Rogers says, well, so come sit down. Let us discuss your problem.
Yeah. So Chef Brockett is sad because he lost a cake decorating contest.
A statewide cake decorating contest.
Yeah, which we've gone into this multiple times on the show.
He's
decorating cakes is not Chef Brockett's strong
I think he's really improved.
He's improved a lot because we do see his cake and it's a perfectly serviceable cake. I mean, it's a good cake. It's a well-decorated cake.
When he said that he was entering a cake decorating competition, my mind harkened back to his celery and blueberry paste asphalt street themed cake.
Yeah.
And I was expecting a real gimmick, but then at the cake decorating competition, he was the only person without a gimmick.
Yeah.
And I feel like that really hurt
It
him.
was just a real meat and potatoes cake.
It was just a chocolate cake with orange, kind of autumn colored icing with some autumn colored flowers.
So he describes this cake contest, this cake decoration contest, which I guess was it just a cake decoration contest?
I don't know if you had to bake the cake or taste the cake.
Yeah. Nobody tastes the cake. So, I mean, it seems like you could just decorate styrofoam.
Oh, you mean unless they cut it, they'll never know?
Look, I've watched, in my years of audio-video retail, I've watched a lot of Food Network shows. And those shows where they're like, you got to decorate a cake to this theme. A lot of Rice Krispie treats going into the more architecturally ambitious sections. Rice Krispie treats.
Oh. Yeah, I mean, one of the decorators says that he painted shells and put them on the cake, which I feel like if you're using inedible objects in the icing, that's cheating.
Surely, if anything, you should like bleach some shells out, pour like white chocolate into them.
Sure.
That's a good.
There you go.
As a mold right there. Cut to the skylight. They're all on a stage that's been built in, I think, a fountain they've turned off.
All these 80s people with their cakes.
And Chef Brockett.
And as he approaches alone to the event, he says at normal speaking volume to himself,
I hope I win.
Yeah. Now, at first,
really telegraphing his motivation.
When we first see him in the scene, he's sort of separate from everybody else, just in the wall. And I wonder for a second if he's even going to interact with this competition. But no, he shows up and he says hi to the people and he shakes everybody's hand and he talks to them and he looks at everybody's cake.
He very quickly goes from person to person without letting them really say anything.
I got a real, like, Pee Wee Herman kind of vibe off of him.
Yeah.
Because
like he does seem like a child.
Yeah.
Compared
he's
to the rest
children's show character interacting with normal human beings.
I can see
and
that.
It's very like, oh, it's a teddy bear. That's nice. Hello. It's nice to, oh, look at that over there.
Yeah, he does seem like a child.
Yeah.
I noticed that none of the other bakers were wearing a chef's hat. He's the only, you gotta lose the hat, I think. That you're the only person doing
It's a bit much, showing up in uniform.
Of the cakes presented, do you have any that stand out to you as being good?
I feel like the second runner-up was maybe my number one.
What was that one?
It was hard to say. They don't really show the cake.
As they're going through honorable mentions and then to the second
and
place.
You barely see
place.
any of them.
But they don't show the cakes themselves. They just show the people's reactions.
No, I feel like third place was pretty good. That was sort of the heart one. I feel like the hearts were sort of indented into the cake, sort of.
Sure.
It was a weird thing. I mean, there's one that's shaped like a teddy bear, which is impressive, but not a great...
Now, they said it was shaped like a panda bear.
Right.
And Chef Brockett says,
oh, it's even panda bear colors.
Yeah.
Which, it's
brown and white.
But it's reversed. It's a reverse panda.
Yeah. It's a reverse, like, red panda.
Yeah. Instead of black, it's brown.
Yeah.
And the brown is where the white should be, and the white is where the brown should be.
It's one of those things that's like, it's an impressive feat to build a cake in that shape.
No, I would say that's the one that stands out to me the most.
But the effect is maybe not the most aesthetically pleasing cake. There's one that looks like a train, which stood out, but is also very company's or Good Housekeeping. Rip this one out of the magazine and save it for your kid's birthday party.
Right.
You go make a train cake.
Sure.
Yeah, I wish we saw the cakes more so we could really judge whose was better or worse. But I will say, Chef Brockett's wasn't the worst.
It's a lot better than any cake we've seen him make before. And I don't think it was winning material, so I don't think he was judged unfairly.
No.
But I think it was the step that he needed to take because he wasn't going for a gimmick.
Yeah.
He was just focusing on getting the fundamentals down.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's what he really needed.
I think if they'd ranked everybody's cakes in order, he wouldn't have been the bottom.
That's fair.
I think he could have beaten some of the less ambitious cakes out. It was a very, like we said, a very workmanlike meat and potatoes kind of cake.
So we come back from this flashback narration thing. And Chef Brockett says how he's sad because he really wanted to win and he didn't. and he was there for the whole day, which he said he was there from morning until the late afternoon, which it didn't seem like that from what we saw, but
No.
what was he doing? Was it like a conference?
Maybe he just did some shopping.
In which case, he shouldn't be using that as a complaint against
No.
the
That's
competition.
true. I mean, it's not even really a complaint because Mr. Rogers, will you have fun? He's like, yeah, I had fun. I got to hang out with all my cake friends.
He learned that you can make icing flowers and put them on gumdrops and then keep them
Yeah.
in the fridge until they're hard. That's his skill that he learned.
It is. I don't know why I eat gumdrops.
I don't
You
know.
can eat gumdrops. Surely you could do that just as easily on like a
ketchup
plastic
container?
thimbles.
Sure.
Yeah, just like a baking sheet. Probably just wax paper, I feel like, would be sufficient.
Maybe the gumdrop gives it that sugar.
Yeah. I mean, maybe the point is that you like take the whole gumdrop and put it on the cake.
Maybe. Or like bury it, like pot it.
Yeah. Yeah, like maybe
Plant it.
even out of the freezer, icing flowers are too delicate to
Maybe.
transplant onto a cake. But
What do we know? So Chef Brockett gets everything off of his hairy chest.
yeah, he leaves out the front door,
Even though he entered in the back, he's just passing through
just
town.
passing through. And on his way out, he runs into who else but
Mr. McFeely of Not So Speedy Delivery.
No, Mr.
Because-
McFeely not even delivering something to Mr. Rogers.
No, he's delivering a giraffe costume to a parade.
Yeah, somebody's going to be in a parade
performer.
later today.
And this man who proclaims himself as the Speedy Deliverer is like, hey, do you want me to open up this giraffe costume so that you can look at it, Mr. Rogers?
Yeah. Mr.
I'm
Rogers
on my
says,
way
"Sure,
to deliver it, but
I'll put it on." So he doesn't completely put it on, but he drapes it over his back and he puts the big giraffe neck head on. I mean, it's a
Uh-huh.
pretty good giraffe costume. I think there's probably like hand stilts that you use to extend
Uh-huh.
your forearms. And it quickly becomes apparent that the reason for this giraffe
it
costume
is a subtle disclaimer for Big Bird.
is to emotionally prepare the regular viewers of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood for the shock of seeing such a large bird.
Yeah, he says when you see a big imaginary animal like this, there's somebody inside pretending to be something
Yeah.
else. And so that was obviously like, this is going to happen, kids. There's going to be a big bird.
Which is because I feel like
Big
Sesame
Bird is not
Street-
really scary.
No, in Sesame Street, and
If Snuffleupagus was on the show, you'd need to have that.
especially
disclaimer.
season 1 Snuffleupagus.
Yeah, that creep.
Or Pokeroo. I don't care for him.
I mean, he's not going to be on.
He's
Mr.
emotionally
Rogers.
unstable. No, because he's Canadian. But like Sesame Street and Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood have to be shooting for basically exactly the same demographic, right?
Mhm. And they don't have this.
I don't feel like Sesame
disclaimer.
Street skews older.
Well,
They're the same preschool audience. Like they hit more letters and stuff.
now
I
we
guess.
discussed this last week, but you were wondering the mental age of Big Bird, and looking it up, he is 6 years old.
Okay.
So it might be skewed a little bit higher since Mr. Rogers is preschool, and
Right.
Sesame Street is letters and numbers and stuff. So,
Right.
So it is.
So
it
maybe
is a
it's-
little bit older.
But I mean, I feel like Sesame Street is certainly prepared for the possibility that people
Yes.
in the Mr. Rogers set, I'm sure they have been lead-ins for each other in PBS at one time or another.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, Sesame Street never needs to say, hey, by the way, there's going to be some monsters on this show. It's going to be big old birds. You're going to see some wild stuff.
But maybe there's this one.
Don't even worry about
this
it.
one fearful child who's like, I know it's safe to turn on the TV at Mr. Rogers' time
Yeah.
because that big bird won't be here.
No, just a bunch of real scary-looking puppets.
Yeah, no, it's true.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's an interesting sort of philosophy. You got to wonder if the Sesame Street people were like, okay, come on, you square. It's just a big puppet. It's just a big bird. It's not that, I don't know. But,
It's like when you go over to your friend's house and your friend goes inside ahead of you to brace everyone for your existence.
yeah, I guess. But nonetheless,
It's easy to be offended when somebody does
Perhaps-
that. Not that it's ever happened to me.
perhaps out of an abundance of caution, Mr. Rogers braces everybody for the possibility of big birds.
I mean, he is very big.
He's a very big bird.
And as we discussed
I'd
last
forgotten,
week,
I think, how big a bird he was. And so, Giraffe being taken care of, Mr. McFeely on his way. Mr. Rogers sits
Chef
down.
Brockett disappears at some point. I don't know.
Yeah, he leaves with Mr. Who cares about Chef Brockett, really? He is not my favorite character.
Oh, why don't you love me?
No, I really don't. And we prepare for a visit from Big Bird,
Yes.
Mr. Rogers calls it, which, as you all know, is, of course, the original title of the popular story, The Night Before the Art Contest. See, The Night Before Christmas? It was originally called A Visit from St. Nicholas.
Oh.
So sort of a joke on that.
Ah, yes, it was a joke for that. The demographic holding that specific knowledge.
I mean, hey, you should see that super deep cut French joke I made on Twitter.
I don't think it's a contest. Certainly not with yourself.
It is, and I'm winning. That's the best kind of contest, is the one with yourself, because you always win.
Well, let's go to the land make believe and see a different sort of contest.
All right. I bet Lady Elaine will agree with me.
Well,
Do we need to do more trolley talking?
no, this is probably enough. Here we
Okay.
are in the land of make believe.
Phew. Here we are. Queen Saturday's talking to Handyman Negri
Yeah.
about Big Bird. She's never heard of Big Bird before.
No, she's like, is he quite large? Is he? And then Joe's like, yeah, he's
He's a big bird.
I think he's bigger than you.
I think Sarah Saturday asks specifically, is he bigger than me? And I'm like, listen, a lot of birds are bigger than you.
Yeah, no, X the owl is bigger
X
than
the
you.
owl, yeah. Or at least it's close.
And then she asks if he's tame.
Yeah,
And
it's quite tame.
Joe says, well, he's been featured on TV.
Yeah,
And so Sarah Satter says, oh, well, in that case, we'll get on fine.
yeah. Sarah Saturday, a bit classist.
Uh-huh.
For somebody who I believe came from common birth to marry into royalty has really... But I mean, yeah, that's always the thing, right? It's the people who are born with it who don't always hold it as such an important thing.
Maybe she's born with it.
Maybe not.
It's Maybelline.
Yeah, and I know. Joe Negri says, I think Big Bird is even bigger than me. And she says, oh, wow. Which is, I think, the first time we've really hit the nail on the head. It's like, hey, some people are tiny in this world and some of them aren't. And that never gets addressed.
Yeah. Big Bird calls people small, but he's also probably calls any normal-sized person small.
I mean, Big Bird comes from Sesame Street, which I feel like is more
I mean, there's
open about sort of the different
size difference.
species
There's
at play.
There's a wide
There's Big Bird, there's monsters,
biodiversity is strong.
there's... I mean, they never really address what Prairie Dawn is as she relates to humans.
Mm.
But yeah,
I think they would refer to Prairie Dawn as a little girl.
Yeah. So it like
Her species is little girl.
would Prairie Dawn grow up into like
into a full
human-sized Prairie Dawn?
like those tap dancing monsters from
Yeah.
the Muppet Show.
Yeah,
size.
like is Prairie Dawn's mother just like a Blue Man Group guy?
Yeah, she grew up and then she was on the stage version of Sesame Street.
Yeah, exactly. You only really ever see most of their parents in like the storybooks.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like the size difference would suggest that, maybe.
Yeah, I suppose.
Her mom seems about the same height as your Gordon's. So we head over to X's house.
Yeah, where Henrietta is feeling friend-zoned and...
Well, X is pulling out all the stops. He's got Big Bird signs.
Yeah, he's...
Welcome, Big Bird.
Signs everywhere.
All
He's
over the place.
Composing a poem.
Right.
For Big Bird. Not, like, he said that he was his friend, but this definitely seems like a dignitary
Yeah.
that we're preparing for. They didn't have this kind of welcome for
Grand-père.
Colette. Yeah.
Yeah, all right, Colette. I forgot which one lived here. Because we never see either of them.
Right.
Mysterious. So he practices his poem. Henrietta Pussycat shows up and is real upset that one of these Big Bird signs is pinned to her house.
Touching her house,
She's like, no, this is too close. This is too close. I don't like it. Just move this sign. X sings a song about how, well, it's a special day because Big Bird's coming.
Was there a song or was it just the poem?
He sings a bit of it because he starts into like a song. It's like, it's a very special day. Shoppa-shoo-boppa-shoppa-shoo-bop is how I imagine it went. I don't really remember.
I don't remember it at all.
And Henrietta runs away crying.
Uh-huh. As she is.
Yeah. And X just says, oh, there she goes again. Why is she crying all the time? Because X is not the most emotionally tuned in guy.
No, I was reminded of Les Mis from this particular scene. with the girl who likes the guy, and then she's like runs off sad, and he's like, well, whatever, I don't understand girls.
Yeah, that's true. She's I don't remember her name. It might be Colette.
Big Bird shows up.
Woo!
No, I mean he shows up.
So yeah, Big Bird shows up. He's got his wagon with his picture sort of propped vertically in it. The only way to carry art. I mean,
yeah.
you went to art school. That's how you do it, right?
No, you get a
special
child's wagon.
Yeah.
And then you put your art in vertically so that everyone on one side of you can bear witness to your fabulous skills.
Yeah, except for the part that's blocked by the art holder.
Yeah.
Yeah, and those are like, what, $1,000 at the college bookstore?
Oh, easily.
Yeah. Especially if you want one in yellow.
Yeah.
My goodness.
Wagons, mostly red.
Yeah, but not Big Birds.
No.
On brand.
Got it custom, maybe got it wrapped.
Yeah, exactly. Who's the decal guy on Sesame Street? Not a lot of business because there's not a lot of cars. Like
Telly. I don't know.
Yeah, probably. He seems like, I bet Telly is the guy who becomes the graphic designer.
I was gonna say mechanic or
Oh no, that's like Sully or somebody.
who's Sully? Harry Monster.
No, I'm pretty sure Sully's the guy who carries Oscar the Grouch around in his garbage can.
Right.
Oscar the Grouch, also one of the few people on Sesame Street who owns a car.
Really?
Yeah, he's got the sloppy jalopy.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I mean it's a New York borough. Not a lot of call for cars. It's mostly a public transportation kind of place.
X the Owl remarks that Big Bird has grown since the convention. I guess they have a bird convention.
Yeah, well, X the Owl mentioned last time when he was getting mail. He's like, oh, I wonder if this is from the bird.
Oh, right.
The bird people. Because I guess that's the only mail he gets. So yeah, I guess this is how they know each other. Is they met at the Big Bird convention.
Not the Big Bird convention, but the Big Bird convention.
Yeah. Big Bird talks about bringing his painting, and he says, I thought I'd bring it by wing and wagon.
What's that a reference to? What figure of speech is that a play on?
Well, the thing that caught me is he's bringing it by wagon when we get to him. Bringing it by wing, like maybe just because he's pulling it with his wings, but this raised for me the question, can Big Bird fly?
Well, later he says, I was just flying through the neighborhood of Make-Believe.
True. Does he mean that literally or not?
The question.
Does Big Bird fly? So I punched that into Google. Can Big Bird fly?
And does he?
He cannot fly. Oh. There's a musical number where some squirrels sing a song about how Big Bird doesn't fly.
Uh-huh.
At the end of the song, they ask him, why does Big Bird not fly? He says he hasn't learned yet.
Oh.
So perhaps he will one day be capable of flight.
I can't wait to see the
He's
day that
he's just never learned it. There's another episode where a parrot is giving Big Bird the business because Big Bird can't fly and Big Bird's real upset about it. He tried. Part of the problem is he can't flap both his wings at the same time.
Right, because as soon as he flaps one down, the other one goes up as if attached to a thread going over his shoulders.
Going over his shoulders, yeah. Yeah, if he could flap both his wings at the same time, he probably wouldn't, I'm just guessing, be able to move his head around very much.
I mean, you might be on something there.
Yeah. So he tries a bunch of stuff, and then eventually he just goes in a hot air balloon with Maria, I think. But he's still at the end of that episode says that he'd like to learn how to fly under his own power. Mm-hmm. But as yet, Big Bird, I mean, he's only 6.
Yeah.
Has not yet learned to fly, but presumably maybe Grandma Bird can fly.
And that's 6 in Big Bird years, which take a long time because he's still 6.
That's an excellent point. Yes.
Colette learns that
Henrietta.
Oh yeah, I've replaced her in my mind with the cat she was.
Oh, don't tell her.
Fearing would do just that. Next week I'll be calling her Big Bird.
Yeah. No, that'd be a show.
Henrietta Pussycat is her fears are relieved that Big
almost
Bird
immediately by Big Bird
not going to. She, I guess, thought that he was going to move into her house.
Yeah,
a lot of misunderstanding
on Henrietta's part. Yeah,
yeah. So she comes around on him and helps out with the poem that describes Big Bird as popular, nice, kind, and all that.
Big Bird is real tuned in emotionally compared to X the Owl.
X the Owl is aloof.
I would say it's because he grew up on Sesame Street, but I mean, we're in in the land of make-believe. So I feel
Yeah,
like the relative levels of emotional literacy are about equal.
But I feel like on Sesame Street, they like sit down and address this sort of thing where on Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, they show it, but they don't always like deal
Resolve
with
it.
it.
Yeah, that could be true.
Like X the Owl this week is completely unaware of what is happening emotionally with his best friend, and all of his adult, let's say, friends are like, what? Like not really trying to help him understand. Just sort of like,
Yeah.
maybe she's jealous. I don't know.
Yeah, Handyman Negri is completely missing what all this Big Bird enthusiasm is doing to Henrietta. But yeah, Big Bird, with his winning personality, wins over Henrietta pretty quickly.
Mm-hmm.
He shows him the painting. It's a pretty good painting. Not up to his self-portraiture, but a pretty good painting of the neighborhood. And then he goes over to show it to the king. Yeah?
Yeah. He goes over to the castle, and there is
Lady Elaine immediately trying to sabotage him.
Yeah, she's like, oh, it's really
too big.
Too bad that you've made such a big painting because
This is a small painting
there's
contest.
a size limit and you've exceeded it.
Yeah. Big Bird also asks if Lady Elaine is the king.
Right. And she's like, no.
Oh, no.
No.
I'm a little surprised she didn't try to just roll with it.
Yeah. No, I don't think
build a
she likes
coup.
the idea of being the person that she despises.
I suppose, yeah. Maybe it's never been a play for the throne. She just wants to. Sometimes some people just want to see the world burn. And that's Lady Elaine.
And she's like, no, I'm the person that's going to win the art contest.
She doesn't seem concerned because before Big Bird even gets there, she's like, "Oh, I hope that bird doesn't win." So it seems like she's sort of written off everyone else in town. Yeah. She knows this town. She's like, "No, none of these people hold a candle to me." But this bird, he's the X factor.
He's the reason I might need to plagiarize Van Gogh.
Yeah. Big Bird has her guessing.
So the King Friday does finally show up.
Yeah. He says, well, one thing because King Friday shows up and he does this whole thing where he like announces himself and everybody does like, yes, King Friday. Thank you, King Friday. But Lady Elaine just says, oh, Friday, honestly.
I missed that.
No, it's great. Lady Elaine Fairchild does not stand on ceremony.
No.
Which is good. Like it's the little thing, but it would have felt wrong if Lady Elaine had done the whole correct as usual King Friday. Yeah. Anyway, there's no size limit. King Friday says, don't worry about that. And then he offers to host Big Bird in the
bee room. We were wondering if he would fit in the castle. And I guess
it's closer than I thought it would be.
There's a bee
back
room.
door.
There's a bee room big enough to contain him where they will entertain him with beautiful bird-like bubbles.
Bird-like, I assume, and just that they float in the air? Or do you think these are bubbles shaped like birds?
I thought they were shaped like birds. I mean,
that is not how surface tension works, but
we put all that R&D into
bubbles.
Balcony-sized bubbles.
True.
Bubble
all
musicals.
We managed was bird-sized bubbles.
Yeah. Big Bird agrees on the condition that he can go back, chat with
his good friend
X the Owl, and grab his wagon.
Yeah. He does have to bend like almost 100% at the waist to get through the door back to the castle.
Now
and I'm surprised he's not too wide too. It seems like a tight squeeze.
Yeah, he does. He fits through the tiny door that no one was expecting him to fit through. But before he leaves, King Friday asks, "Are you related to the cassowary?" And then Big Bird says that he's a golden condor, which makes Joe Negri laugh audibly.
Yeah, you gotta wonder if any of that was scripted.
Yeah, I don't think it was.
No, because we've both done so. You think it's a thing where like Mr. Rogers is just off script all the time when he's doing these puppets?
Yeah, I mean the characters are wacky enough that I don't know if you can really keep them on.
Yeah, like I kind of wonder if all this time Fred Rogers has just been riffing, and it wasn't until Carol Spinney shows up that he gets somebody who really bats it back at him.
Yeah,
because.
He says, "Are you related to a cassowary?" And Big Bird says, "Well, actually, I'm a golden condor." And then Joe Negri's like, "What?"
Yeah. I feel like this was Carol Spinney being like, "Oh, this is a thing," but actually, there's an answer to this. We've established the Big Bird as a golden condor.
Yeah.
Yeah. Carol Spinney has that press kit down, so when he goes out on tour, he's got answers to all the questions.
Yeah.
He's heard them before. Lady Elaine also says, well, it's a nice painting, and it's a big painting, but it doesn't animate.
Oh, yes. She hints that hers is going to move.
Right, move.
Yeah.
So she's getting into, and I wonder if
maybe she caught wind of the flashback that we saw earlier.
Yeah, I was
the
gonna
moving
say.
silhouettes.
Yeah, who knows? Maybe she'll just paint it on a bus.
On the side of the trolley.
Maybe she'll just like submit a frame
and then
and
put
tell
the
people
frame,
look through
put the
it.
frame really far away from, so that she's got the whole just really far away.
Just
from
try to pass off the neighborhood
as her own.
as her own. Maybe she'll just paint the neighborhood like a house painter would paint a house.
I mean, any neighbor in a neighborhood has a hand in its creation.
Whoa!
She shaped that town
art
by that
a
token.
lot. I mean, she literally rearranged the whole town with
That's
her
true.
boomerang.
The only version of this town that we know is completely rearranged because of her. Yeah.
So there you go.
Please listen to episode 1 through 5 of our podcast to learn more about Lady Elaine's rearranging habits.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's you're never going to keep up with this podcast if you're not up on all the deep canon of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood.
Oh, definitely.
Which is really what this show is about.
Yeah, Big Bird manages to stuff himself through a human door.
Yep.
We're all very impressed.
Yep. Trolley heads out, says a little hello to Joe Negri.
And
seems to be aware of what happened with Henrietta and X the Owl. Because sort of as he's leaving, Joe Negri says, well, sometimes when you feel jealous, that just means you love somebody.
Mm-hmm.
So
I thought that was Mr. Rogers that said that, or was that?
I mean, Mr. Rogers expands on that theme, but I think the takeaway here really is that there's a lot of romantic tension between Henrietta and X the Owl.
Which we've always known.
We've always suspected. This just underlines it because, as we know, there is only one kind of love.
True.
And that is the kind that TV shows like best.
Shipping.
Yep. Shipping. Oh, so what's X the Owl and Henrietta's ship name? It can't just be Henrietta XX. Oh, maybe it is Henrietta XX.
Yeah, Henrietta Cross X.
Henriexa. Henrietta Cross X makes it start to sound like a Final Fantasy spinoff.
Well, that's great. I'd say that's great.
Yeah.
Henrietta Cross X HD.
It's like that poem, Owl and the Pussycat.
Yeah, there you go. On the pea green boat.
Yeah, exactly. One of them wore boots, maybe. The other had a hat.
I think one had a musical instrument, like a violin or something.
It's hard to say how much of this is the poem and how much of this is the particular illustrations we had of this poem as children.
As an artist, you're not going to add a violin if you don't have to.
You might if it's a pretty short poem.
I suppose.
Sometimes you gotta, you know...
Embellish.
That's the word.
Any other notes here?
We don't have really any other notes. I'm getting... I mean, we head back to Mr. Rogers' house. Now, where do we want to talk about? Because I also quickly watched sort of a 12-minute supercut and skipped through it of the time Mr. Rogers went to Sesame Street and met primarily Big Bird.
Okay. Can you say so?
I mean, basically, you got Mr. Rogers standing on the corner of Sesame Street reading a book. Big Bird gets him to judge a foot race between him and Snuffleupagus. Between Big Bird and Snuffleupagus.
Okay.
Yeah. Mr. Rogers is like, well, actually, I'm waiting for somebody to pick me up, so I have to go pretty quick. And he's like, no, it'll be quick. We're just running around the block. And you just got to say who gets here first. And he's like, well, all right, I'll stay as long as I can. And my hope really is that he'll be gone by the time the race ends. But instead, and I skipped a bit, Big Bird wins the foot race and is happy but then sad because it means his friend lost. Mr. Rogers gives him sort of the, well, maybe he's upset because he's worried his friends won't like a loser. My word's not exactly his. And then I guess he gets his ride. And then later he shows up again at Big Bird's house. And Big Bird is a bit confused because he isn't sure if he really met Mr. Rogers or if he just imagined it. Because in retrospect, Big Bird has bad adult friends who just accuse him of having imagined meeting Mr. Rogers.
Well, also we have the problem because in Mr. Rogers' world, Big Bird exists within his imagination in the land of make-believe. And so maybe Big Bird is wondering now if Mr. Rogers exists within his imagination.
Right, yeah.
Maybe they only interact within each other's imagination.
Indeed. And I think this is also peak Snuffleupagus. People still think he's imaginary, which is why he can't get any of his friends to help judge this foot race, because they're all like, I'm not going to sit here and tell you if you beat your imaginary friend in a foot race. And then for like 5-10 minutes, Mr. Rogers tries to convince Big Bird that he's real.
That who's real?
That Mr. Rogers is real.
Oh, I see.
So Big Bird like closes his eyes and opens them, and he hasn't disappeared. And then he like closes his eyes and tries to touch him, but ends up accidentally touching himself. I don't know. It goes on for a while, and I skipped through it a lot. But
I can't really contribute because I didn't watch it.
yeah, sorry. Anyways, that's the time Mr. Rogers met Big Bird. Mr. Rogers sings a song, and that's the end of the episode. I don't have any notes. Do you?
Nope.
Great.
Well, that was episode 1483. Next week we'll be back with 1484.
What day of the week will that be?
That'll be the 4th episode. So
okay,
we're
so we've
coming
got 2 more left. That's what I thought.
coming close to the end of the week.
What new wrinkle will be introduced into the art contest and Lady Elaine Fairchild's efforts to win it by any means necessary?
I suspect that probably it'll just sort of drag on with non-monumental plot progressions that will be resolved in the matter of minutes and then replaced with a new, easily solved problem.
I submit that tomorrow will actually be the end of the art contest, and then we'll be like, what's Friday going to be about?
And then clowns will show up.
Yeah. And who knows what weird stuff Mr. Rogers will bring home for us to look at.
It'll all be spun around into a spooky conclusion for our Halloween month.
Woo! Ghost noises.
Be sure to check out our Tumblr at pleasewon'tyoubemine.tumblr.com. This week we'll have pictures of maybe Big Bird fitting through a tiny door.
Yeah, maybe a song about how he can't fly.
Sure. Our theme song was provided by Dan Brisbane.
Dan Brisbane will never be replaced by a small cat or a big bird. Though if he was replaced by a big bird, boy, that would be something, right?
Yeah, I'd be sad, and also I'd get over it.
That would be weird, but I bet his musical career would really take off.
Potentially literally, because he's older than 6 years old.
He'd probably learn how to fly.
Our trolley transition tune was made by Rindale.
For all we know, Rindale is a big bird.
We'll be back when the week is new.
And we'll have more ideas for you. Oh, the ideas we'll have and the places we'll go. Dr. Seuss, hashtag.
Andrew, you seem to already have things you want to talk about.
I do. I will have more things next week I want to talk about.
Thanks for setting up the grammatical structure for my line.
I do what I can. I'll do what I can in the future.
I will too.
We did it!
So let's make the most of this beautiful day. Since we're together, we might as well say, would you be mine? Could you be mine? Won't you please? Won't you please? Please, won't you be my neighbor? Won't you please? Won't you please? Please, won't you be my podcast?
Are you by any chance related to the cassowary?
No, I'm a golden condor.
Oh, lovely. Well, I can't wait for you to banty about with Queen Sarah.